I wanna kiss you all over.
And we're back!
This is so weird hearing myself.
I know. This is what you guys hear. I just feel bad. You guys hear Seth Rogen talking to you this whole time?
Yeah, and I'm like,
No one told me I sound like Seth Rogen.
I feel like I sound really nasally right now.
Is that how I sound all the time?
That was the devil.
Dude.
The literal devil.
I thought that came out of your ass. I was going to say, get away.
I thought a demon was behind me, about to pull my heart through my chest.
We need some more JB behind the glass this year. That's tasty. That's what the people want.
If I want to scream and we're back, I gotta be like outside in the kitchen.
I'm sorry, balls? I could whip them out if you need visual confirmation.
One testicle per elite wide receiver on your team.
How do you walk, man?
Are we ready to do this?
go.
I'm nervous.
Let's go.
I'm nervous, boys.
Every God and I'm nervous. No, let's go.
Episode 15?
Year 2, we in the cloud, baby.
You're the cloud. Well, I'm sure we have fans because some of these videos got 59 views, guys. Corey on his 9 different apps.
Refresh.
What a fucking fanboy.
Till the night closes in on me.
You can't contain this voice.
Oh, God.
Are we ready, Jason? Can I scream?
I feel like it's gonna be loud.
Probably.
And we're back!
And we're back!
You can't laugh, motherfucker.
And don't clap either. That sounds like
Clapping big face.
Okay. Oh, fuck off.
I'm the only gay in the village.
Welcome back to Season 2 of the Dual Threat Podcast. Can you feel the energy? I'm tingling. The gang is all here. JB behind the glass. Nor the reigning Gridiron Gala League champion. And yours truly, Sam Nix. It has been 7 long months since our last pod, but we're all back, and oh, how things have changed. I mean, I didn't get a playoff win last season. Corey's trophy case is empty. Jason was beer bitch. Wait, well, I guess not much has changed, but the biggest difference between now and a year ago is that you are a league champion, my friend Nor. How does it feel 7 months later?
Feels like everything wrong that I did in my life has meaning, finally. I think that if I can provide hope to everyone that's never felt it, a sense of belonging to everyone that's never felt like they belong, just realize that you too can go from worst to first.
An inspiration to
Jason.
well, he's not a miracle worker, Jason. He's just one man.
Are you a god?
All right, we have a long pod ahead of us, so let's skip the pomp and circumstance and get to a full draft day recap from our league destination draft from Scottsdale, Arizona, monsoon capital of the Southwest. So let's start out with the restricted free agent period, and the bullets were flying. Nor, what stood out to you?
Oh, I didn't think there was anything particularly crazy or whatever that happened. It all seemed pretty normal. No one was, acquired at a history, sound-breaking, groundbreaking value. It's pretty normal. What do you think?
Well, everything appeared to be going par for the course, in my opinion. We had Kelvin Benjamin at $14. We had Keenan Allen at $38. That may have been a bit of a steal, but then the atom bomb that was Todd Gurley that you are trying to sweep under the rug here. Straight Hiroshima, the Airbnb in Scottsdale, as Gurley went for a Gridiron Gala league record $82. And not only was he bid up to $82, you matched it. Now, can we take a moment here and explain your thought process during this whole ordeal?
Sure. I had a feeling this might come up. I don't know why. Something just told me that this topic would be served up here today. the real reason I wanted to at least retain Todd Gurley's services at almost any cost was because I had the cap room to match almost anything that was going to be out there. From the moment that I decided to hit him with the RFA tag, I knew that in a normal league, if you're in an auction, he's going to go for like $60, $65, $70 maybe. In our league, with Magic Mike Ariola at the helm of free agent bidding, at an easy $10. So in my head, he was going to go for 80. I just knew that going in. So to me, it was really about setting a hard stop, which actually, as I told a couple of guys after the draft had concluded, 85 was as high as I was willing to go. So 82, I was like, let me do some math. Let me make sure I'm good here. I'm gonna go for it. I also have been talking to the wizard behind the glass here, JB, about a potential trade, and knew that a trade couldn't happen if I didn't have Todd Gurley in the first place. So I thought, let me at least retain him. And worst case scenario, I've got him very overpaid, but I've got him for this year, and I can try and make a trade. If the trade falls through, I've still got him. I can tag him next year. So I'm essentially overpaying this year just to have the option of hanging on to him.
Awesome. So I remember that was a storyline going to the draft.
Yep.
Was this obviously Todd Gurley getting overpaid, but then there were whispers of this trade between you and JB behind the glass, and I have both of you here, and I'm wondering, can we, now that the dust is settled, I assume this trade is dead, can we talk about the juiciness that may have been?
Sure. Yeah, we were avidly discussing what max kind of ceiling of a salary that JB could afford. And I was trying to get a sense of that before the draft. Everything we talked about had got into the $70 conversation. And I figured, okay, well, if he's cool with 70, if we can somehow leave things at 75 and that's where I get Gurley, then there's a chance this could still work. So I was willing to at least entertain that. The deal itself was obviously going to involve the number one pick. I personally feel like Todd Gurley, as a singular player, is worth at least two, maybe even 3 players. So the number one pick and other future picks and stuff were going to probably need to be involved just for me to feel like it was worth it. But I felt like the deal could have been done if, Magic Mike didn't come raining down upon us in our deal. Gomez had also expressed some interest, but I knew that if he wasn't going to be bidding on Todd upwards of $60, which is about where I think I saw him tap out, he wasn't going to be really down for a deal. So the deal was pretty much Jason or no one.
Interesting. Well,
and here we are.
Another one bites the dust thanks to a Mike Ariola. But hey, that was some good price enforcement by Mike. So good on him. He had more balls than I did. I'll tell you that. All right, moving on. So, Tevin Coleman was the 4th player up for bid and went for a mere $10, which could represent value for Gomez, followed up by Brandon Cooks at $35, 15 more than his ESPN auction value at the time. Are you a believer in Cooks' talent?
Talent, yes. But whether or not I feel like he's worth, $15 higher than his going rate, or in that particular offense, I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of mouths to feed in terms of the way Cooks does his damage, stretching down the field, and you got Robert Woods as well, and all of it still kind of flows through Gurley. Gurley was second on the team in passing targets last year, so clearly he's a factor in the passing game. I don't know. It's just kind of baffling to me why someone of Brandon Cooks' talent is now already on, his 3rd team in his pretty young career. I don't think he's a problem or anything, but he keeps getting moved around, and we also haven't seen him play without a Hall of Fame quarterback yet. So kind of wondering how he's going to do there.
Okay. And then Sammy Watkins went for $14 after Cooks, the same price as Kelvin Benjamin, who kicked off the RFA period. Which player do you prefer between Watkins and Benjamin?
When we were initially when I was reading through this pre-draft sheet, I was almost immediately like, Benjamin probably. Touchdown upside is there. He's the number one target. He's going to probably be the best bet. But as I started to think through it, I was like, well, he's still got the big question mark at QB with maybe Josh Allen starting. Also, number one receiver means you get the number one cornerback draw, so we don't know about that either. Versus Watkins, who is maybe the third potentially even fourth option if Kareem Hunt gets involved in the passing game. And Sammy Watkins is just going to be stretching the field. Obviously, with the move to Mahomes, Casey is going to be trying to go deep all day. So I think that I would actually prefer Watkins over Benjamin after thinking about it.
Got it. So basically, they should be close in price. No one over or underpaid, but
Yeah.
it'll be play out this season. So
Yeah.
we'll see if somebody in the room made the right decision.
Definitely pros and cons to both players. But
Speaking of poor decisions, Garcon went for $7 following Watkins, and I elected not to match this bid. Any concerns that Garcon is your third highest paid wide receiver?
Monsieur Garçon, parlez-vous français? First of all, how dare you come at me with that kind of tone? I think that $7 for a starting receiver that I can use off the bench, I can use to plug in at a flex maybe if I need to. He's never really been a guy that had huge touchdown potential, but the numbers he's put up in Kyle Shanahan's offense in the past, I think, dictate why he signed with the Niners before the Niners even had a quarterback. That's how much you trust Kyle Shanahan's system and what he can do in it. So I feel like, yeah, if I'm just using him as a rotational piece, should be fine. And currently, he's tied for the second most expensive receiver, no longer, because I made the trade. T.Y. Hilton's gone. So Tyreek Hill and Pierre Garçon are both $7.
All right. So Kenyon Drake becomes the 10th highest paid running back in the Gridiron Gala, going for $46 to Gomez. Any issues with this contract for a player who only totaled 880 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2017?
Yeah, I didn't like this at all. I was like, "Oh, you do you, Gomez. That's cool, man." I'm always kind of extra wary of these players that go on a little hot streak towards the end of the year, and that's where they get a majority of their yards. I just feel like those players have a harder time reproducing that output over the course of the next year. And Miami's just also like, I don't know, they're not that good of a team. So I'm just kind of wondering how reliable any of their pieces are going to be. Sure, the touches are probably going to be there for Drake, but you've also got, a somewhat promising rookie that Corey thinks is going to win the job by week 6, even though he can't get on the field and can't pass block, but good on you, bud. And you've got, the unstoppable, indomitable Frank Gore there as well to snipe red zone looks or goal line carries or whatever the hell he's going to do there. So I don't know. I think it's a lot to pay for Drake, knowing that he hasn't had a whole year to show, what kind of volume he's really going to get.
Yeah, got it. Drake's kind of like a mystery box this year. We'll see what we get when we open it up.
See.
When he gets the starter's load for touches. But Robbie Anderson closed out the restricted free agent period with a $9 bid matched. And if he hits on his Deshaun Jackson-like upside, this could be a steal for Kevin on the third-year pro. Any thoughts on Robbie Anderson?
I mean, it's a total Kevin move, just getting a presumably valuable piece at a very premium price. I think it's just Kevin doing what he does. We'll see. Now that the Jets shipped off Teddy Bridgewater, Darnold looks like he's going to be running the show. If he's got all eyes for Robbie Anderson, then this is a great move. If the touchdowns don't connect, then we'll see. But it's also low risk in terms of the dollar amount that he spent on him. So, damn it, Kevin.
Is Darnold going to throw it deep? I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I don't know if I saw. I mean, he did it a bit at USC. I've always thought Darnold had like a weird kind of delivery, but like the ball gets there. It's just, I don't know. Darnold to me is a total wild card.
Well, we'll see. Kevin's got enough wide receiver depth to play around with up and down weeks of Robbie Anderson. So ultimately, the biggest story of the restricted free agent period was Todd Gurley and his record contract. You managed to keep the band together with Hunt, Fournette, Gurley, but the three had a combined salary hit of $71.36 in 2017, and now that price has risen to $131.50 in 2018. Have you had time to marinate on this? Any regrets?
No regrets, but inflation is an ugly thing, unfortunately. I think if it weren't for Kareem Hunt's contract, I'd really be underwater in terms of all of these numbers. But for now, I'm just going to really do everything I can to try and keep this trio together and hopefully repeat on last year's success. We'll see.
All right. Well, that'll bring a close to the restricted free agent period. We'll move to our linear draft recap. All right, let's start with round one. It started off with a bang as Saquon Barkley went at the number 1 overall pick to ours truly, JB behind the glass, followed by Julio Jones, Royce Freeman, Rob Gronkowski, Ronald Jones, Chris Thompson, AJ Green, LaShawn McCoy, Sony Michel, and rounded out with my very own Carry On My Wayward Son at number 10.
He's been practicing. That's ridiculous.
Nor, what are your initial thoughts on this first round?
I think that it started off at the top, as most of us expected. It was really, I personally was holding out hope that Jason wasn't going to overthink this one and maybe go for a receiver or something like that. But that part was the top 2 picks were in line with, I think, what a lot of us were expecting. Royce Freeman, I could see the upside, obviously, as a rookie and the potential lead back that's going to be in Denver. Ronald Jones obviously also adding in there. A little surprised that Slater went Gronk, just because having Kelsey already, leave it to Slater. He's going to find ways to innovate at every possible turn. AJ Green falling to you at 7 is something we're going to talk about for sure. And then I got to say, in terms of biggest surprise here for me, I get why Ferralis felt like, attacking the running back position was maybe a necessity. But Chris Thompson, of all guys, I'm not sure in particular who else he might have wanted to go for in terms of everyone's dollar amount. But I feel like Chris Thompson, we saw his peak last year, whatever it was when he was rolling, that's the best he's going to do. So unless you're expecting that and for him to sustain it, I just don't feel like he's worth a first round pick necessarily. So we'll see. We'll see how it pans out for him. But interesting choice, and it helped you just get AJ Green with a Coke and a smile.
Yeah, that was my initial thought as well, is the quote-unquote surprise picks within the top 6. So I had initially tagged throughout the whole offseason, I had tagged the first 4 picks in no essential order to be Saquon, Julio, Gronk, and Green. I thought those were the 4 picks. And so I planned my draft strategy accordingly. So I thought they were going to go to the top 4, which is why I traded the 5th overall pick to Tony, because I didn't think any of the blue chip players would be there at 5 and 7. Or at 5 at 8. So I kept my 7th. I said, someone will fall to me. And then lo and behold, at the 5 spot with AJ Green on the board, we had a run of Ronald Jones and Chris Thompson, which really blew my mind. I was not expecting AJ Green to make it to me at 7, and this could blow up in my face, and Ronald Jones could be a stud, and Chris Thompson could return to the form that he had last year. But I'm happy with getting AJ Green at the 7th spot. So I think that's returning good value. Obviously, I didn't plan my salary cap according to AJ Green being there. That's just why I'm broke as a joke right now. But I thought I'd draft him and roll the dice and see what happens after that.
Yeah, we didn't. Touching on Chris Thompson, we also didn't. I didn't really touch on the Ronald Jones pick too much. But let me put my fedora on here and try and figure out what Tony was trying to do. I'm assuming that because he had just traded Odell to you, that drafting AJ at that spot, maybe it felt like too much of a net 1-for-1 for him, and he wanted to go for upside and have a running back that maybe he could have at a low value for years running. I can understand some of the logic behind that, but when you've got AJ Green sitting there, and maybe it's because Tony's had AJ Green before and he's been a frustrating player to own. At times he can be. So maybe there's that. But I don't know. Tony can explain it to us as only he can over, Bud Light, not Coors Light.
All right. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I want to throw one question back to you. So now that the die is cast, and it's basically evolved into me trading Demaryius Thomas, Ronald Jones, and LaShawn McCoy for Odell Beckham and some later round picks. What do you think of that trade?
Demaryius Thomas, LaShawn McCoy, and Ronald Jones for Odell. I gotta say that's a pretty sweet haul in terms of the type of player you're getting versus the dollar hit that I know Demaryius still was, and we all know Shady is, and Shady's running back upside of 30. We know what he could very well do just fine, but being that you didn't really need Shady at this point on your team, I think the net that you got is pretty great.
All right. Well, staying in round one, let's move away from initial thoughts and go to biggest surprise. And you may have touched on it already, but I have a big surprise in the first round that we have not talked about. But I'll let you go ahead.
I mean, I think the combo of Ronald Jones and Chris Thompson, going where they went, I think was a surprise. Rookie running backs are going to find their way into the first round of a dynasty draft, probably in every format. So it's not as surprising that they went in the first round, just kind of where they did in reference to who else is on the board.
Got it. Yeah, definitely Ronald Jones, Chris Thompson were surprises to me, but I think I tagged this player before the draft started to go to this owner. I didn't know it was going to happen so early, but I knew this owner would not leave the draft without this player, whether he drafted him or traded for him after the draft. But it was Royce Freeman at 103 to Areola. I knew just based on the player profile and the potential upside / sleeper factor that's associated with Royce Freeman that Areola just had to have him. So I that was a big surprise to me that he went at 103. I thought it was going to be maybe a early second round pick. That Areola would do his due diligence, try to get back up into the second to get him early. But I give him all due credit. He took his guy at 103.
Yep.
So he put his chips on the table. We'll see where they land during the season.
Shoot your shot.
Best value, quick gut shot. Best value, round one, go.
Oh, come on, man. You going to make me say it? Is it really?
You don't have to.
That's just the truth, though.
I'm not rubbing my nipples. Go ahead.
Man, you should not stop. Please continue. It's got to be AJ Green. That's ridiculous that you got him where you got him. And basically got Odell and AJ Green in the first round this year. That's the way I look at it.
Okay, yeah, mine was AJ Green at 107 as well. A lot of good picks, obviously, in the first round. You could argue that Saquon, depending on how he performs this year, even at 101, was a great value. So we'll see what Jason does with that. But moving on to round two. Started off at 201 with Marvin Jones to Jason, followed by Adam Thielen, Chris Hogan, Marlon Mack, Evan Ingram, Rashad Penny, Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz, Nick Chubb, and ended with Kirk Cousins to Norr. So such poetry to bookend the second round with Jason and Norr. Why don't you talk about your initial thoughts on this round, Norr?
I was wondering what approach Jason was going to take after finally getting the Saquon pick in and getting it handled and starting to see what kind of roster construction he was dealing with. I feel like it's really just a matter of preference between choosing a player for his apparent upside and also taking into the dollar amount as a factor too. So I think that very quickly started to weigh into people's decisions here. And having already taken a rookie running back, you probably didn't want to take too many more. Otherwise, I could see some of the Rashad Pennies or maybe even the Nick Chubb pick kind of being in the thought process here. But I think Marvin Jones does represent some upside. Obviously, he's proven that he can be like one of the better receivers, in the league on a week-to-week basis. But there are then those down weeks. So Marvin Jones is the type of player I'm kind of scared of owning personally because you never know. Stafford seems to just clue into today's Marvin's turn. He gets all the targets, he gets all the looks, and then next week you're like, well, great, maybe it's Golden Tate's turn, and whichever way Stafford wants to roll, he kind of goes with it. So high upside, but some volatility as well.
Okay. My initial thoughts is that Norr, you had 2 second-round picks, and it seems like you are all in on the Vikings 2018 offense. You spent the 2 second-round picks on Adam Thielen, wide receiver, and Kirk Cousins, the new highly paid quarterback in Minnesota. I feel as though at least one Viking skill position has to be a bust, or Cousins going to have the greatest statistical season of all time. I mean, he cannot support Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Kyle Rudolph, Dalvin Cook. Like, someone has to disappoint this season. Hopefully it's not Adam Thielen for your sake, but that was my initial thought, is it seems that you are all in on this offense.
So Thielen was actually who I was strongly considering taking at the end of the first round. I had a couple guys on my board where, I was thinking maybe Royce Freeman, maybe maybe either Sony Michel or just trying to take like a lottery pick with a rookie running back, essentially. Once you offered me the trade to get out of the first round, I felt like, well, I'm only dropping back a couple picks. I'll do it. Thielen was also in the consideration, so I was really happy to get him here at this spot because I feel like I just netted picks and got the guy I wanted. I was not planning on taking Kirk Cousins this early. I was not even planning on taking quarterback this early. But the next guys on my list that I wanted to try and target in this round were actually Marlon Mack, Nick Chubb, and maybe Rashard Penny. So being that all of them went before my end of the round pick, I felt like, okay, well, I need to maybe shore up a quarterback position because I was also already thinking of trading one of or both of my third rounders in the next round to get some cap space by packaging a player together. So I was sort of just trying to get some of my needs filled before I started moving out of spots.
Got it. All right. So just before we move on, can you imagine that Vikings offense is if Laquan Treadwell was anything?
Oh my God, it's kind of crazy, like that they had as good as an offense as they do when he was a first round pick and he looked like a stud in college before he had a really bad injury. So I was counting on that upside. I drafted him last year. I thought he'd be something, and he just can't manage to either make enough dents to stay on the field, or maybe it's the matter of what you're talking about. There's just too many mouths to feed, and he doesn't get enough love. I don't know, but yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Well, we'll see. He's got a highly paid quarterback under center now. We'll see if he can make it happen. All right, so biggest surprise in round 2.
I'd have to say that, I guess he's the first quarterback drafted, so Russell Wilson, is more of to me, it's more of a surprise that, like, someone didn't jump on him earlier. I mean, this guy's gone in the top 5 in our drafts before, and he's only put up better and better seasons as time goes on. So with a couple different teams needing a quarterback, I was kind of surprised he fell a little bit further than he did. It's not a huge tumble, but a little surprised that he went mid to late second round.
Yeah, my surprise is a quarterback as well, except it's the next pick to Areola. It was Carson Wentz, who's taken in round 2 at the 208, with a price tag of $7, which is one more than Russell Wilson. The issue I have with it is, one, his week 1 status is in doubt, and 2, you're paying him more than Russell Wilson. I know you didn't have the opportunity to draft Russell, but that seems like a big shocker to me to pay $7 for a quarterback who might not even be healthy to start the season. So, what about best value? What is your best value in round 2?
I think time will tell if Nick Chubb ends up being as valuable as he may be, but I really gotta say that, at least for the first couple weeks, I mean, Chris Hogan's going to be getting a ton of targets in New England, and Corey's got the stack with him and Tom Brady to replace the old Gronk and Brady stack on his team. I got to say, I don't know if it's super value, like necessarily value based on slot where he was taken, or even his price is pretty good, but just the fact that he filled a need, and at least in the early going, he's going to probably get the most dividend out of it. I'd say that was a pretty solid choice. I would have loved to just be able to grab Nick Chubb here, but for Alice getting him, I'd say that either of those two are my picks.
My biggest value was Marlon Mack at the 204 to Kevin. I think he could be a star behind the revamped Indy O-line, and at only $3, I think he's worth a gamble. I'm sad to see him injured in the preseason, but I think once he returns, he wins that job. He's got little to no competition. I'm not a believer in Jordan Wilkins. I'm not a believer in Naeem Hines. I think that backfield's all his as long as he can stay healthy. And I may be drinking, but I also agree with the owner of the Indianapolis Colts that he could be a 1,300 to 1,500 yard type of guy, total yards, if he remains healthy. So we'll see.
Is that a Jim Irsay drinking joke? Is that where we're going?
Moving on to round 3. It started off again with Beer Bitch Jason as he drafted Devin Funchess, followed by Jordan Reed, Alex Collins, Marquise Goodwin, Cam Newton, Marshawn Lynch, Cooper Kupp, Darius Geis, Drew Brees, and DJ Moore closed it out with Areola picking 10th. Nor your initial thoughts?
I was a little amazed that Alex Collins slid this far. I think him and Marshawn Lynch were grouped together in kind of my board in terms of tiers and whatnot. I also think that kind of the rookie allure it continually catches Mike Ariola. I'm sure he watches. I think he watches the most college football or up there in terms of the group. So it does not surprise me from that end. But he's taking a shot on another rookie, DJ Moore, who's got some serious upside. But kind of wondering whether or not round 3 was where he needed to go for him. But within this round, he did also net a trade with me and got another receiver. So probably gave him the freedom to sort of take a swing there. I think that I've got to say the biggest surprise is, just the fact that Slater went the way that he did. And I'm sure you have some thoughts on that too.
Yeah, so my initial thought, again, was Alex Collins falling to the 303. Him falling to the 3rd round kind of makes you have to reanalyze those first-round picks of Chris Thompson and Ronald Jones. Like, how do those guys get picked ahead of Alex Collins? And again, upside, yeah, maybe they have higher upside, but how much safer is Alex Collins than those two guys? And in the first round, I'm not sure you should be shooting for the moon when you got valuable first-round picks.
Yeah.
I definitely would have taken Alex Collins over Carry On, my wayward son, in the first had I had the cap room, but I just didn't have it. And it's terrible when you don't have any cap room and you see other teams with tons of cap room, but that you see players like Alex Collins just tumbling, and you can't do anything about it. You don't want to say anything because maybe they just get forgotten about.
Yeah.
But that was definitely my biggest initial thought of the 3rd round.
Yeah, all things considered, instead of taking Kirk Cousins, like my roster would probably be in a lot better depth and shape at the running back position in particular if instead of taking Cousins I had taken Alex Collins. But by then I was netting almost, I think, $7 of cap room before I made my trade to free up a little bit. So I was worried about exactly what you were talking about from the first round, just pushing yourself over the line and, knowing that I may or may not get a lot of help from you guys after spending $82. I was like, okay, I might need to do myself a favor here and stay away from some of the pricier players, even though there was some serious talent still out there.
Yep. And you touched on this, so my biggest surprise of the 3rd round was Slater actually spending some actual draft capital on a 49er, Drew Brees not being on Tony's team, and Darius Geis still goes in the top 3 rounds despite missing the entire 2018 season with a torn ACL. So those are my 3 big surprises from this round. You have any extra thoughts?
I mean, I mirror those surprises. I, sort of teased up and tossed up the Goodwin pick. And obviously, Drew Brees not being on Tony's team, it makes me kind of feel like Drew Brees isn't even in fantasy football this year. He might not even be allowed to be drafted in other leagues. I just feel like him and Tony have been joined at the hip for so long. I like the Geis pick, obviously, just because you're just waiting to see. I mean, you're giving him a redshirt year, obviously, and we'll see how he does next year. But all the hype that was surrounding him this year, I mean, I think easily instead of Royce Freeman going 3rd, Geis would have went 3rd in our draft this year if he was on the table.
Yeah, word on the street at draft day was a lot of people were eyeing him in the first, so I thought worth a shot. And I envisioned Drew Brees and Tony. I don't know who here has seen The Last Jedi, but that force connection between Kylo,
Force Skype calling, as I call it.
I feel like that's what Tony and Drew Brees have.
It's a Force Google Hangout.
All right, best value round 3, go.
It may not be the pick I was thinking about at the time, but I mean, I just got a feeling that Marshawn Lynch is going to actually really do some things this year, mainly because he's not on Jason's team, and that's just, we know what happens, with the freedom that players get when they. I'm kidding, I love it, but no,
at least twice.
Yeah.
This season,
I think that Lynch is just going to get fed the ball a ton. I mean, it might be the only part of Gruden's offense that is going to remain the same from when he, used to be in the league to now. He's just going to pound the ball a bunch, and Marshawn knows he's playing on limited time. He's going to go all out, so I think the burst is going to be back and everything. So I think getting Marshawn, who could easily end the year as a solid RB2 for Tony, is pretty great value in the middle of the 3rd.
Yeah, I like that pick. I completely agree. I like Marshawn this year. Sorry JB, but I think Gruden is going to ride him. He has a history of riding those solo backs, and I think the Raiders made the mistake of trying to save him for the playoffs that they never made last year, which was an unfortunate decision. I think they're going to let him run loose this year. So my best value was Drew Brees, taken at 309. He was taken for $2, and he was also taken behind Russell Wilson, an injured Carson Wentz, your boy Kirk Cousins, and Cam Newton. I think there's a bounce back year for Drew Brees. I get why his numbers were down last year. They had to focus on the run more, but I think they're going to have a regression back to the mean in terms of his passing efficiency, his passing totals. I think a bounce back year for Drew Brees, and to get him in the third, at the end of the third for $2, great value. All right, moving on to round 4. Started off with Sterling Shepard to Jason, followed by Kyle Rudolph, Matt Stafford, Emmanuel Sanders, Calvin Ridley, C.J. Anderson, Rex Burkhead, Delaney Walker, Robert Woods, and Jamal Williams. Some would argue the talent is dipping in this round. Nor, what were your initial thoughts?
There's certain players that you just sort of want to highlight when you're heading into a draft of maybe I want to try and get them, or I want to at least pay attention to see where they go, see where your rankings were, kind of get an assessment of if you're ranking them too highly or low or whatever. But I had my eye on Calvin Ridley. I wanted to know where he was going to go. I wanted to see, who's going to end up taking him. I had traded out of the 4th round, so I knew I didn't have a shot if he was going to go that round. Would have loved to potentially had a shot at him, but that was my biggest surprise, was just that not only did he go, but he went relatively middle of the round.
Okay, since you like Calvin Ridley, let me play a little over-under with you here. Okay, we'll do over-under receptions 65.
I'll say under.
Over-under 850 yards.
I will say under. I think I want to put him at 55 to 60 catches for about 800 yards and 5 or less touchdowns.
Well, you jumped ahead to my touchdowns, dang it! But yeah, I was going to put it at 6.5. So there we go.
The band is back, baby.
We're already mind melding. All right. So my initial thoughts was: does Corey have too many Patriots players? I know that they're always his crutch, and he likes to lean on them because he doesn't know what else to do. But he's got Rex Burkhead, Chris Hogan, Tom Brady. I'm wondering, do you think he's got too many Patriots on his team?
Short answer, yes, absolutely. I mean, 3 players from one offense is asking a lot. Yes, it's the Patriots. Yes, they're usually rolling, but let's say it's going good with Chris Hogan. Then Edelman comes back. I mean, yeah, Hogan's probably still going to get red zone looks, but he's sharing that with Gronk already. Plus, we know that Tom loves the swing pass to the back for in the red zone as well, which may be Burkhead, maybe James White, maybe Sony Michel. Who else can get involved? You never know with the Patriots system. So for a system that spreads the ball around as much, for him to try and to get as many of those pieces as he can, I understand some of the logic. I think it's mainly just that he wants, to be able to text the group about one of the stacks that he has whenever Tom Brady scores a touchdown, because the chances of them going to one of his players is probably pretty high.
Okay. So we'll go to biggest surprise now. What's your biggest surprise of round 4?
I was a little surprised about the C.J. Anderson pick. I do kind of get the upside, kind of just replacing the red zone looks and maybe whatever the capacity that Jonathan Stewart was still doing there last year. But and maybe C.J. Anderson's probably going to get some goal line work and all that. I get it, but I just was kind of surprised that round 4 was where he ended up going. I kind of felt like guys that you're kind of looking at as a bench player, or maybe like a sort of like in a pinch spot start, just for touchdown upside. I feel like those players tend to go later, but as you said in the kickoff of this round, people just kind of took their guys and started taking swings in this round.
Yeah, my biggest surprise was the 401. Jason kicked us off with Sterling Shepard. Sterling Shepard taken in round 4, not a big deal, but he was taken before Emmanuel Sanders, Robert Woods, Jordy Nelson, Jamison Crowder, Randall Cobb, Michael Crabtree. I feel like all of those are safer, potentially, than the maybe 3rd or 4th option, depending on how many catches Saquon Barkley gets in that Giants offense. Again, I don't know how many receivers Eli can support, but to take the number 3 or 4 option over number 1 or number 2 options in other offenses, a little bit surprising to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from. Just to play a little devil's advocate, the guy calling the plays this year in New York managed to create a number two receiver kind of out of nowhere in Minnesota last year as well. So I think just that if his system can breed the same kind of output that he saw last year, then Sterling Shepard could be this year's Adam Thielen or Diggs, depending on who you think is the number one or the number two there in Minnesota. So I think the upside does present itself, but you're absolutely hitting it on the head for the most part, where there are a lot of mouths to feed. We're not sure who's going to get the looks. And you are relying on Eli at the end of the day. But people were relying on Case Keenum last year too, and that was as surprising as anything, right?
Yep. I have no doubts about Sterling's talent. So
Absolutely.
yeah, we'll just see the usage. That's all that counts.
Yep.
So best value round 4.
It's got to go with Jamal Williams, actually, just at the end of the round. I mean, he's got all of the ability to kind of be the lead back there in Green Bay. Yeah, a lead back in Green Bay may not ever get that many carries, maybe like 15 to 17 in that range, but you're never going to see it in the box. You're obviously going to be able to catch some passes from Rodgers. So the upside is all good there. And for Ariel to take some swings on some high upside players earlier, I think Jamal could be that safe, kind of like consistent workload player that works out for him. And, to add on, he doesn't need a lot out of him. He's still got McCaffrey, Royce Freeman that are going to be lead backs in their offense as well. So he could be maybe a nice trade piece. Maybe if one of the other backs in Green Bay goes down, his workload goes up. So I just think a lot of promising upside from Jamal Williams.
Okay. My best value in round 4 was, unfortunately, Kevin at the 404, sneaking away again this year with an overpriced Emmanuel Sanders. Though he was overpriced, in my opinion, I think he's the best value in round 4. Nothing but shining reports out of training camp this year. Apparently he played all last year injured. Apparently all Denver wide receivers did. But I think Emmanuel Sanders is going to have a very solid season, and to get him in the middle of round 4 is a great pick.
Yeah.
Moving on to round 5. Started out with Jack Doyle, followed by Tariq Cohen, David Njoku, Jordy Nelson, Tyler Eifert, Marcus Mariota. The Rams defense, guess who picked them? Jamison Crowder, George Kittle, and finished off with Marquise Lee. So your initial thoughts?
Obviously, selfishly speaking, buyer's remorse has already set in on Marquise Lee. Pretty vicious low that hit below the knee in preseason a few weeks ago. He's already out, so that's a tough one. But other than that, the kickoff run on tight ends, obviously, very interesting. Also, a player like Tariq Cohen, mirroring what we were saying about Chris Thompson to kick things off in the first round. These types of players that are really just, they're net yardage players, they're gadget players, whatever you want to call them. It's always interesting to see how they end up getting used a year later, because sure, Tariq Cohen was one of the more surprising electric players last year, but he did have his ups and downs, and he did eventually peter out. So it'll be interesting to see how Matt Nagy puts him to work this year. Some people say he's going to be like his Kareem Hunt, or maybe even like his Tyreek Hill, depending on how he decides to use him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I'm glad you touched on Tariq Cohen, because I think it is how Matt Nagy's going to use him, and it's, there's a conspiracy theory that Tariq Cohen's been used so little in the preseason because they're saving him for the regular season. They're going to unveil what their actual plans for Tariq Cohen is. I guess I don't know if that rumor was started by Slater to try to protect this pick, but we've seen very little Tariq Cohen in the preseason. But I think he can be deployed in a variety of ways, just like Chris Thompson does.
Yeah.
So hopefully, for Slater's sake and his sanity, that they do that.
If there's anyone in the group that can start a rumor by themselves and have it actually catch on to the national scene, I think it's the illustrious Slater, obviously.
Yeah, my initial thoughts were also geared towards the tight ends. It looks like this is a little bit of tight end desperation with Jack Doyle, David Njoku, Tyler Eifert, George Kittle, all going in this round. Seems like it's definitely a run, but I don't know if it's a run worthy, depending on the other talent that was available at the time. I think there were other serviceable positions, maybe a tier higher in other positions, but the tight end market's very thin. So if you want somebody, you got to go and get them. You got to reach. which is why I picked Evan Ingram earlier in the draft. I identified him as a very talented tight end prospect, and so when you don't get players like that, you got to take a run in round 5 for players like these.
Yeah, I think with the linear draft setup, the way that our draft runs this year, it's less about waiting on players, right? I think that's more of a snake draft approach, right? You wait on a guy, see if he can fall back to you, kind of go with that. With the linear approach, I feel like there's just more of like a ideology of like, nope, you like a guy, they're on your board, you can afford him, or maybe even you can't, take him, figure it out. I think a lot more teams seem to deploy that this year, as it being our second year in the linear draft setup.
Yep. All right, moving on. Biggest surprise, round 5.
I don't think I need to, take a wild guess at this at all. So we're already in agreement on this. I don't even have to guess who you're going to say. Take it away.
It's obviously the Rams' defense and special teams.
Why?
Just kidding.
Why?
That's not a surprise. Corey picked them. He always reaches. Don't worry, it's not my surprise. I'm not going to waste everyone's time. Corey always reaches for a defense and special teams. It's to be expected. Thus, not a surprise.
Reach for the sky, honky!
The surprise I would go with in the first round is actually Tyler Eifert. I get the pick here. I mean, the upside versus the capital you're investing makes sense. Tyler Eifert's obviously double-digit touchdown potential when he's healthy and on the field. Now, that's the big question. Is he healthy? He turned down a lot of deals this offseason, so he can remain with the Bengals, and it's an incentive-laden deal, so he's incentivized to stay on the field and be healthy, and he could potentially make up to $8 million this year. So Tyler Eifert bet on himself, and Gomez bet on Tyler Eifert betting on himself.
All bets are off.
I am not in here to make a fucking bet.
Right, let's moving on to best value. I'll start it off since I just talked about it. I like the biggest surprise, but I also think it's potentially the best value. It's also Tyler Eifert. If he plays even 8 to 10 games, I think he could score anywhere from 6 to 10 touchdowns. So if he plays anywhere beyond 10 games, we're talking about a potential top 8 tight end. To get him in the 5th round is a great bargain.
Yeah, for me, I think it's going to depend on how the whole Cleveland offense shakes out. I think there's always obviously a lot of like extra juice about a team that's on Hard Knocks. We get to see them a little bit more right before the draft. They're kind of most fresh in your mind. So I was interested to see where David Njoku was going to go this year. Obviously, in terms of the red zone, for what you can imagine their offense to be, it's probably not Jarvis Landry. It's probably Carlos Hyde downhill, maybe Nick Chubb cycling in there, and then Josh Gordon if and when he decides to get off the party bus or whatever he's on to go play some football. So otherwise, the red zone option is probably going to be David Njoku, and so we'll see if that pans out. That's a pretty strong pick.
All right, moving on to round 6, kicked off with a defense as Jason selected the Vikings. Moving on to Ben Roethlisberger, the Panthers defense, Randall Cobb, Phillip Rivers, Greg Zuerlein, Robbie Gould, Larry Fitzgerald, Nelson Aguilar, and Richard Matthews. Nora, your initial thoughts?
Funny how the trends still happen, even in this linear draft with, one person setting off a couple different snowball picks as they were. So defenses started to go, kickers started to go. I think it's pretty telling that it was pretty much all kickers, defenses, 2 quarterbacks, 2 receivers, like not a lot of running backs. I think that tells you that in the earlier parts of the draft, people are targeting those positions, trying to fill their roster, get as many running backs as they can, and then later just try and add in little pieces here and there. So it's interesting to say that we went this long without a running back being taken in their whole round.
My initial thoughts are that I have figured out Tony's draft strategy. It is to save your cap and select an overpriced wide receiver that is tumble.
You mean the Devontae Parker approach?
Yes, exactly. The DP. So obviously Larry Fitzgerald goes at 608 to Tony. Obviously in a draft that did not take into account the cap hit that would be taken with Larry Fitzgerald, he would have gone much earlier because he's very talented, very solid, safe.
Absolutely,
he would be like a great wide receiver 5 on my team. But for Larry to go in the 6th round here, I think is my initial thoughts. That's a great value for Tony, despite his $32 paycheck. If you've got the money to spend, that's a very talented player to pick up in the 6th round.
Absolutely, I have to agree with that.
Biggest surprise, round 6, go.
I mean, you got your starting quarterback, round 6. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, this league inherently depresses the value of a quarterback,
Yeah.
and even though we technically need 2
Yeah.
to win tiebreaker, I knew there'd be somebody that fell to me. I had targeted Phillip Rivers. If you'd seen my draft board, he was in my tier 1 of quarterbacks that were available. I had him up there with Carson Wentz and Drew Brees and Russell Wilson. So I really am a believer in this. I wish Hunter Henry was healthy.
Yep. As do I.
But I think I don't think it affects him, honestly. I think they're going to mold their offense. They're
Yeah.
going to run less 2-receiver sets.
Yeah.
And they're going to run more 3 and 4 wide receiver because they go 4 deep with Travis Benjamin being
Yep,
there.
yep.
People forget about him. So I think that receiving core is probably the best in the league if Mike Williams turns out to be anything
Yep.
to pair with Keenan Allen and Tyrell Williams
Yep.
of House Tyrell.
House Tyrell.
So I think they're just going to disregard the tight end, and obviously Melvin Gore is going to catch 50 to 60 balls, and I'm a big believer in that offense, and I pride myself on my ability to find a late round quarterback, and so
true.
I hope that
Yeah.
I did that again this year.
It is your move, so that's why I had to tip of the cap, sir.
All right. My biggest surprise is obviously the amount of kickers and defenses that it went in round 6, and they're picked ahead of actual NFL starters / upside rookies. Obviously, people need to fill out the rosters, and sometimes cap restrictions come into play. But I think in a normal draft to have kickers and defenses go in the middle rounds, very strange. So hopefully we don't see any late round values going on here. Finishing up, best value, round 6.
It's got to be Rivers. Like, just getting a starting quarterback there, and you're set. You're good to go. I agree with everything you said a few minutes ago about the upside that the Chargers offense still brings, even without having Hunter Henry. I think they've proven that they can throw it all over the yard as much as they need to. Rivers will throw it 60 times a game if he has to. So I think the upside's all there.
Okay. Yeah, my best value, and this could be dependent on training camp storylines, but I think if you are on an offense with Aaron Rodgers and you have 2 hands that work, I think that is a great position to be in. So Randall Cobb going at the 604, it speaks to me. I love it.
I think you might not even need 2 hands that work with Rodgers. You might just need, like, I don't know, like a kangaroo pouch or something, and he'll just throw it in there.
Shaq Griffin, get in there.
I was going to say, or no arms, and he'll just throw it into your face mask and you just run.
All right. Round 7 opened up with kicker Justin Tucker, followed by Steven Gostkowski, Matt Bryant, John Brown, Josh Lambo, Christian Kirk, Michael Crabtree, Chris Carson, Chargers defense, and Kalen Balash. Nor, your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts are, I kind of wish I had a piece of this round because there's some players I wanted to take that I didn't even get a chance at here. But rookie running backs obviously have their value in our scoring format and the fact that it's a dynasty league. But rookie receivers are always so intriguing to me because we all take shots at them at varying degrees or varying volumes year after year, and the amount of return we ever see on a rookie receiver is usually very, very minimal. But it's like the most enticing thing too, right? Because it's like, what if I get the guy that, like, you know, is the Keenan Allen of that year, or any other examples you want to use. So it's always interesting to see where these guys start going and when. So that's what drew my eye. Christian Kirk was a player that in the NFL draft I was very high on, really wanted to see where he ended up. Annoyingly, he ended up on the Cardinals, and now he's on Gomez's fantasy team as well.
Yeah, my initial thoughts were the tumble of Michael Crabtree and Chris Carson. I think those are players that have the floor and the talent to be drafted a lot higher than when they were drafted. So to see them here in round 7 is very surprising.
Yeah, I think Seattle knows that in order to keep Russell Wilson alive, they're going to outrun the ball a lot more than they ever have. And I think they plan on using both Carson and Penny plenty. So, yeah.
Biggest surprise, round 7.
I mean, you already alluded to how far Crabtree fell. I'm not the biggest fan of Michael Crabtree as a player and as like a teammate and all that stuff, but he is projecting to be the number 1 receiver here. So I'd say that certainly seems to be like the biggest value. But just to go in a little bit of a different direction, I gotta say it's just as surprising as it was to have Slater taking Niners earlier in the draft. Seeing Tony take some Seahawks is always a little bit unsettling to me emotionally.
My biggest surprise is that Seahawk, Chris Carson. Not that he goes so late, but that he was drafted 5 rounds after his counterpart in the backfield, Rashad Penny. Obviously, I feel as though it's pretty confident to say that Chris Carson is going to be the lead back heading into week 1. Now, whether Rashad Penny wins that job throughout the season, we will see.
Yep.
But to go 5 rounds later than his counterpart Rashad Penny, surprising to me.
Yeah, agreed.
Best value, round 7. Go.
It's really hard not to just sit here and say, do we really have to talk about kickers and defenses this much? But when you talk about like the kickers that actually can impact games and have you win some weeks that maybe you should lose, I think Justin Tucker and Steven Gostkowski are those kickers. They're on their own strata when it comes to kicker tiers. So I would say getting Justin Tucker is probably a good move for JB. He's been dealt a slow death or even a quick death sometimes at the hands of other kickers. So it'll be, hopefully luck will be on his side this year to have Justin Tucker bang out some touchdowns for him through some 60-yard kicks.
Shoot base! Shoot base!
All right. Well, we touched on it earlier, so I won't steal too much time on it, but Michael Crabtree is my best value at the 707. Seems like a steal at $6. Even at his floor, I think he's going to be an 800 to 900-yard receiver, and he might score anywhere from 5 to 8 touchdowns, and as a rotational player, I think that's a great value.
Yep.
Round 8, recap. Started off with Alan Hearns to Jason, followed by Anthony Miller, Julian Edelman, Cortland Sutton, Ravens D, Jared Cook, Michael Gallup, Corey Clement, Will Lutz, and Mike Williams. Nor your initial thoughts.
Like I said, it's always interesting to see where rookie wide receivers are going. There's a lot to talk about in this round in terms of the shots that some of our guys took on some of these receivers and even some of these players in general. Corey Clement's an interesting player to check out. He showed some serious upside last year, but was in a very crowded situation. Gets a little less convoluted, but they also lose their play caller. Kind of wondering if Philly's going to just try and go with the Doug Peterson offense, see what kind of balance can be struck with a different play caller, even if it is Doug Peterson that's doing it. Also, how did we let Anthony Miller, of all players, just go to Slater after all year that Slater spent just slurping him as much as he could? That's the kind of happiness we can't allow in this league, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, my Anthony Miller is part of my initial thoughts, and I dubbed this round 8, the round of home run swings. People were swinging for the fences on this one, and that's part of it. Anthony Miller. It's also Julian Edelman serving a 4-game suspension. Kevin's unrequited love for Cortland Sutton. Michael Gallup being the number 1 receiver in Dallas. And then you picking Mike Williams for a bounce-back year in year 2. I think we already touched on him, and I'm a believer in his talent as well. That's I will touch on Mike Williams a little bit later in this segment. But I think all of these people could return great value, but their floors are, basement level.
They're definitely players you gotta wait and see. I mean, Mike Williams might be in a position to contribute a little earlier on. Maybe Gallup will too, but I think Anthony Miller being a rookie, Cortland Sutton being a rookie, Edelman being suspended, you're gonna kind of have to wait and see what kind of impact they can have. Edelman, obviously, we've seen before, but he hasn't played football in almost a year and a half at this point, so you never know. Maybe he'll come back and be a little rusty and all that. I gotta say that I think the Cortland Sutton pick is actually, it's got some serious value here. If Kevin wants to taxi him, or if Kevin wants to just wait and see if maybe Emmanuel Sanders or Demaryius Thomas starts to show signs of maybe not so much rust, but maybe they start to break down a little bit, a little high ankle sprain or something that happens. I mean, these things do come up over the year, and that could be all it takes for Cortland Sutton to come in, because I don't know, watching Cortland Sutton in college and also seeing some glimpses of him in the preseason this year, there are times where I think he's Demaryius Thomas. He seems to be the same frame, similar route running. He snatches the ball when it's near him. I think there's some serious upside there.
Okay. Biggest surprise in round 8?
I'm a little surprised that both Dallas receivers went so close to each other. I really thought by the time we drafted, one of them would kind of present himself as the starter. Maybe that's what Jason was feeling, is that Alan Hearns has already done that, or that of the two, he's likely to be that guy. But I thought they would end up distancing themselves a little bit from each other, and one would be taken maybe a round earlier than the other. But seeing both of them go in the same round is a little surprising.
Yeah. My biggest surprise also dealt with a wide receiver, but it is your pick at the 8-10. It is Mike Williams. And my surprise is that Mike Williams was drafted after Anthony Miller, Sutton, Gallup, when Williams is arguably more talented, on a better offense, with the best quarterback of the bunch. I think that's very surprising that they let him fall that far.
Yeah, I think my toss-up decision here came to Mike Williams and a player that went in the 9th round that we'll talk about in a little bit. But it really just comes down to seeing the player I saw in college when they were playing for all those national championships at Clemson versus Alabama, seeing what he did against a high-caliber, very athletic defense in Alabama. In years prior, there's been a lot of conversation from my end about how I felt about Deshaun Jackson coming into the league, how I thought he was going to do. I'll absolutely admit being wrong about that and eating whatever shit I have to for not believing that he'd be able to translate.
Put that kapoop in your mouth. No!
But a big reason that I was down on Deshaun Watson was because I saw Mike Williams doing unbelievable things in college in terms of bailing him out, making crazy catches all over the field. So I've been a big believer in Mike Williams for a few seasons, and I'm hoping that the injuries he dealt with last year were just nagging. All of the upside we talked about earlier about the Chargers offense as it stands right now, we'll see. Maybe we got a good one here.
All right, that leads me into my best value of round 8. It is Mike Williams at the 8-10 pick. I would have loved to have grabbed him here, but I was a little bit cap-strapped. Yeah. Your best value, round 8.
I'm going to have to say it really is Julian Edelman. I mean, just knowing that if all goes right, when he comes back, you're getting Tom Brady's number 1B option. I know in our scoring format, Edelman might not be as valuable as he is in other formats, but in the red zone, Tom still looks his way. He can still get open one-on-one. And, there's going to be games where he just ends up getting, 2 touchdowns. And at the rate the Patriots score, I think having a target from them is not a bad move.
All right. Let's blast through these last 2 rounds as we got a lot of passes, a lot of kickers, a lot of defenses. It started off with Jimmy Garoppolo at the 901, followed by Dion Lewis, Blake Bortles, James Washington, my first pass of the draft. Houston defense, Keelan Cole, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, Feralis's pass, and Josh Doxson to Noor at the 9-10. Your initial thoughts?
How many Jaguars can go in a round is my initial thought. That's pretty amazing. And, only 2 of them to Mike. That's even more amazing. I would have thought he went 3 for 3 somewhere. But initially, this is obviously the passes do happen. Interesting to see, where Garoppolo was going to end up. I was kind of wondering between the myriad of Niners fans in the draft who was going to get him. I had already taken 2 quarterbacks, so I was very unlikely, as handsome as he is, to take a third. So those are my initial responses.
Yeah, my initial thoughts is Jimmy Garoppolo's fall. I thought he'd go a lot earlier, but the handsome one drops to the 9th round. Still, Jason picked him up at the 901. We'll see how he does this year. Your biggest surprise, Noor, of round 9? It's
really just got to be that Kevin was able to go back-to-back rounds and get rookie receivers that show tremendous upside. When I alluded to earlier my toss-up with Mike Williams, the player I was considering taking was James Washington. Seeing what he did in college, obviously he jumps off the field in terms of the tape and all that stuff, but also knowing that all of the hits that the Steelers have seemed to have with the receivers year after year. I mean, you go back as far as you want to. We talked about Emmanuel Sanders earlier. He was drafted by the Steelers. Mike Wallace, Antonio Holmes, it just goes on and on of players that they've taken that they just turned into something, right? Martavis Bryant, Antonio Brown, we'll keep going. So I think James Washington presents that kind of upside. Also, I mean, whenever Ben Roethlisberger is ready to retire, he's going to hand the keys probably to Mason Rudolph. If he can tie his shoes, he'll be a better quarterback than Landry Jones. And he's already got all the chemistry and timing in the world of James Washington. So, I just think it's a little annoying that he ended up on Kevin's team.
Yeah, Kevin obviously did his homework this year. The biggest surprise to me was Dion Lewis lasting until the 902. Obviously, this is salary cap related, as Dion Lewis comes with a $9 price tag. Maybe not worth that, but obviously too talented of a player to last all the way till round 9.
Yeah, I agree.
Best value in round 9, Nor.
I mean, it's just who we already touched on. It's got to be James Washington.
Yep, that's mine as well. The Steelers definitely know what they're doing with these mid-round receivers.
Yep.
Round 10 started off with Austin Hooper, followed by the Broncos defense, followed by a pass by Areola. Then Dak Prescott, Mike Gesicki, Samaje Perine, Dallas Goedert, Spencer Ware, a pass by Feralis, and ended up with the Infinity Stone himself.
All the fantasy football is logic.
Yes.
Yes.
Frank Gore, the ageless one.
He is tremendous.
Your initial thoughts?
I'm gonna be that guy that was sitting there in the 10th round after taking 47 tequila shots with Kevin and spending $82 on Gurley, and after all this happening, to be in the 10th round and hear Tony say he's taking Spencer Ware, I actually said, "Fuck!" Because I wanted Spencer Ware. I wanted a handcuff. I wanted a little running back depth, and I'm that guy that late in the draft was still annoyed physically that I didn't get the player I wanted.
Yep, you selected Josh Doxson over the potential league-winning handcuff. So yeah, that my initial thoughts was though you didn't get Spencer Ware, I loved the victory lap as a lifelong Niner fan and basically someone who will retire a 49er, that you picked Frank Gore as Mr. Irrelevant at the 10-10. Love that pick.
After being so furious over missing out on Spencer Ware, I felt like there's only one thing that could put me in a good mood again. So it was Frank.
Your biggest surprise, I think I know what it is, of round 10.
Yeah, it's that I wasn't able to secure the deal and get Spencer Ware. I can't get over it. It still bothers me. You're welcome, Tony. Tip with a fedora to you.
That's my biggest surprise as well, is that one, that Spencer Ware lasted so long, because I think he may have value on his own.
Yeah.
And two is that he didn't end up on your team. Very disappointed in your management there. I'm going to blame that on the tequila shots.
Absolutely.
Best value, I'll start off. You can finish. Mine, although Spencer Ware is a great value, I still think that Frank Gore is a heartbeat away from being a actual, somehow usable fantasy asset at, 34, 35 years old? So he's not going to break any 100-yard scampers, but I think churning out some touchdown runs in a desperate Miami offense, I think that could happen.
Yeah, especially if they ever get a lead on New England in one of those games. They're going to just try and run the ball the rest of the game, try and win 3-0 if they can. So I think all the running backs get work against New England at least twice a year, and maybe that's all Frank gets, and maybe that'll be enough. I don't think it's bad at all to take a starting tight end in the 10th round either. So Austin Hooper isn't a bad pick in my opinion either. Never really know what version of the Falcons offense is going to show up from year to year, but if he does have some of the red zone upside that I think he does, if Julio Jones is not catching touchdowns, someone's got to catch touchdowns on his team. So I'm thinking that it could very well be Austin Hooper.
All right. So there you have it. The first ever destination draft completed in Scottsdale, Arizona, starting off with Saquon Barkley and ending with Frank Gore. What a great draft and experience that was. That's all of the recap for the first 10 rounds. We're going to move on to our draft grades. Down to you.
Get down, do you?
Good blow this is.
I smell your lightsaber.
Moving on to the 2018 draft grades. We'll go in the original draft order here, starting with our own JB behind the glass.
Oh.
We'll start off with Jason Versees getting a C- at an overall draft grade. Sounds harsh, but let me defend myself, JB. Let me defend myself.
What?
With the addition of Barkley, his talent pool takes an immediate leap, no doubt. But the next 3 picks seem like a greater reach each consecutive round, and all at the same position with Marvin Jones, Devin Funchess, and Sterling Shepard. And these early round reaches weren't really paired with any late round flyers with much upside. I felt more could have been done with the first overall pick in this new draft format. Nor your thoughts.
You're just a mean old man, Sammy. A C minus does seem kind of harsh, but reading through your logic and hearing it in person, I gotta say that I do understand some of it. I feel like even if you say that the best picks he made during the draft were Barkley, Sterling Shepard, primarily, and then the other guys kind of grouped under that, then you're relying solely on the New York offense to really make sure that it stays consistent and all the mouths get fed. Obviously, Barkley is going to be one of those people that gets the ball a lot, but Sterling Shepard having that kind of serious output will remain to be seen. But I feel like there's a chance it could work out. It's going to take a lot of luck and hopefully not a lot of Eli Manning faces.
Moving on to Slater. His overall grade is a solid B. The reason I gave this selection was a standout selection of Gronk, Marquise Goodwin, and Anthony Miller showcased Slate's classic swing for the fences approach. It was a miracle Slater was able to exit the draft with as many talented players as he did when he entered the offseason with such few selections and so little cap.
Yeah, when you're getting immediate starters out of a couple picks in a row, I gotta say that's gonna improve your draft grade a lot. Having the flexibility to have both Gronk and Kelsey, I think Slater's team took a pretty big step up. The trade away, trading Alvin Kamara away, that's gonna make or break at least the first couple weeks for Slater. We'll see if this year bears a repeat of last year with a quarter season life crisis and several trades follow suit. But in the early goings, I could see Slater's team being one of the stronger ones.
Yeah, Slater needs a trade sponsor in 2018. He needs to check in with somebody if he feels like making a trade.
Every 24 hours, he's going to call one of us to make sure he's not thinking about some ridiculous-ass trade.
Next up is Areola. I give Areola an A-. Maybe starting off the draft with a couple of reaches for albeit talented players in Royce Freeman and Carson Wentz. Mike solidified these risky picks by drafting Alex Collins in the 3rd, Jamal Williams in the 4th, Edelman in the 8th, and took high upside players in DJ Moore, David Njoku, Keelan Cole to balance everything out. I really like what Mike did in this draft.
And, like we just mentioned, Slater making a trade earlier. And so trades that happen before the draft, I think that's a different lens that you're looking at things through. But Mike made a trade during the draft. He got a starter out of it. I gave him T.Y. Hilton and a couple picks, which he used on some of these high-risk players. He lost Tyreek Hill in the deal, but a Hill for Hilton kind of replacement is maybe a net 1-to-1. But along with some of the players he can wait on to see how they develop, see how they come out, he can also pretty willingly and easily start T.Y. Hilton as long as Andrew Luck is good to go. So I think Mike probably had one of the best drafts out of the group.
Agreed. Moving on to Kevin, begrudgingly, I give him a very high grade, an A. Solid A. Seemingly redeeming himself after last year's draft debacle, Kevin grabs a variety of talented players, mostly of the wide receiver variety, but I feel like Kevin got a value in almost every round. He was without a first and a third round selections, but he still came away with Marlon Mack, Kyle Rudolph, Emmanuel Sanders, Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, Cortland Sutton, James Washington, and Dak Prescott. Pretty impressive haul considering he only had one selection in the first 31 picks.
And sort of picking up on what I was talking about just a moment ago with Areola, it wasn't during the draft, but Kevin essentially traded his first pick for Alvin Kamara. So really, it's like he didn't have a third round pick because the first round pick is essentially Alvin Kamara. So his draft haul looks even better in that regard because you add that into the package. He pretty much drafted an entire team almost to roll out there. So I think add that to what he already had, being in a situation where he can really choose his flex a number of different ways, relying on David Johnson and Alvin Kamara. I think Kevin's back in the driver's seat in terms of having one of the top heavier teams in the league.
All right, moving on to Corey. I give him a generous B-.
Proof that you're not begrudging on these grades here.
Exactly. I'm very unbiased. I don't know why people say that I am. I can see what Corey was going for here, which is not typically the case. Obviously, he's going to lean on the Patriots, but this year I feel like he is actually beginning to trust himself as a talent evaluator and take some calculated risks with the selections of Jordan Reed and Calvin Ridley within the first 4 rounds. Picking up Crabtree in round 7 gives him a bit of safety, and then you can't blame him for trying to find the next Gronk with the selections of Gesicki and Goddard in round 10.
Yeah, I think picking up what you're saying, Jordan Reed brings some obvious risk, but some obvious upside. I think we've all seen it before. When he's healthy, he's an elite tight end. When he's not, which is unfortunately often, you are kind of missing something from your lineup. But having whether it's Gesicki or Goddard, whoever gets to get the lion's share of the targets in their respective offenses, they could easily step in. Like you said several minutes ago, tight end is a very flat position. There's not a lot of action there. So just getting a guy that has some touchdown potential, that might be it for tight ends, unless you have one of the elite ones.
Okay, moving on to Gomez, I give him a solid B. During the draft, I really thought Gomez had whiffed on a lot of important selections, but looking back now, the draft was pretty solid, picking out of the number 2 slot. Picking up Julio Jones is always a good thing, but then pairing him with really high upside guys like Rashad Penny, Drew Brees, Tyler Eifert, Marcus Mariota, Samaje Perine. I think this fits right into Gomez's MO, where he is going to have a lot of volatile weeks and be a nightmare to play, as 1 week he could be the highest scoring team and the next he could be the lowest.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to catch him on one of those high-end weeks with guys like Julio and Brees and their touchdown potential. We've seen Eifert have multiple touchdown games if he can stay on the field, as you alluded to. And who knows, maybe Rashad Penny ends up taking the job over full-time in Seattle, and you're going to get all of the upside of every down, or at least a 20-plus touch back in that offense. So there's a lot to look forward to for Gomez. I didn't quite see it pick by pick, as you kind of same thing you said, but looking at it overall at the end, I can definitely see what he's going for.
All right, moving on to myself. I gave myself an unbiased
B for biased.
Unbiased B-. A rhyme intended. I couldn't make all the selections I wanted to due to salary cap restrictions. I hadn't planned on AJ Green following me at the 107, obviously, so I hadn't accounted for that in my budget, but to nab talented players in Green, Evan Ingram, Jamison Crowder, and Darius Geis for next season, to pair with a roster that was pretty much filled prior to the start of the draft, I think I did pretty well to solidify myself in this draft.
Yeah, I think just taking a look at your roster after the draft, I was once again reaching for that giant bottle of Milagro. It was just it's a dearth of talent on your team. No bones about it. You've got 3 elite receivers, which is tremendous. 4? Is that what you're saying? Are you telling me there's 4? Okay.
There's 4. There's 4.
There's 4. You've got plenty of running backs to start. You've got Rivers that we talked about a lot earlier, and you're going to be able to redshirt Darius Geis and see what you get out of him next year. So not only value this year, but potential game-changing value next year in terms of a player like that. So I would normally say tip of the fedora if we're talking about Tony, but for you, tip of the turban, my friend.
Much appreciated. Moving on to Tony, speak of the fedora, I give him a B+. I was genuinely shocked when Tony passed on AJ Green in round 1 in favor of Ronald Jones, but I think backing this risky first-round selection with a lot of safer picks throughout the draft really showed Tony's experience and knowledge. Picking up LaShawn McCoy, Marshawn Lynch, Matthew Stafford, Delaney Walker, Larry Fitzgerald, Chris Carson. These players all seem like really high floor players to me, which should carry Tony through any growing pains Ronald Jones may have to endure in the early part of the season.
Yep. Gotta agree with you. All the players you named right there, going through McCoy, Lynch, Stafford, Walker, Fitz, Carson, they're all starters. He could start. That's a lineup he could have, with that group, and so that's pretty impressive to add to whatever he had going, and then can wait on Jones and then see what he gets out of him. I would say digging a little bit deeper into what we were talking about earlier and trying to see things through Tony's eyes during the draft and during his roster construction. Passing on AJ Green, but still netting Larry Fitzgerald, he's probably going to be like, by the end of the year, maybe the delta between them is not that significant. So I can kind of see what he's going for there. So let's see if this B plus that Tony got stands for bronze.
All right, moving on to Ferralis and what I believe to be the low water mark of the league.
Oh my God!
I'm gonna give Ferralis a D plus.
Damn.
Passing D's get degrees, baby. This draft was full of shockers and showstoppers throughout. Starting off with the first round selections of Chris Thompson and Sony Michel, both of which don't necessarily profile as workhorse backs, as well as they were both injured during the times of their selections. Russell Wilson was a strong pick in round 2, but that came a string of picks, which I am not a fan of. They were Nick Chubb, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, George Kittle, and then the rest of the draft was a kicker and defense. So pairing very risky first-round selections with really low floor players was too risky of a strategy for me, hence the D+.
I think last year for Alice's sort of like just shockers and showstoppers approach, as he did it last year too, and it certainly worked in his favor for the most part. I mean, he had Deshaun Watson. He drafted Deshaun Watson. He had Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook. He had a bunch of these guys, and it worked out. Almost everyone that he just took a random flyer on happened to pan out. So I think taking the same approach to it this year, he's gonna try and replicate it. Of the players you listed just there, I'd have to say, other than Nick Chubb, I feel like the upside of a couple of those guys is clearly prevalent, but you kind of wonder what you're going to get. Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are going to be fighting for the same ball, and you don't know if the LA offense is going to be able to sustain what it did last year. It was obviously took a lot of people by surprise. The NFL is great at turning around on offenses that do catch you by surprise the year prior. And then, even George Kittle, seemed to show a rapport with Jimmy Garoppolo, but has already shown, I'm not going to say he's fragile, but he's already injured. So the timing is going to take a little bit longer to get back together and everything like that. So, he could be the missing link in the red zone for the Niners right now, but you don't know. You don't know what you're going to get out of him. So I agree. A lot of risk. We'll see how much reward.
All right, finishing up with the reigning Gridiron Gala champion, the man sitting across from me, Nor. I gave you a B-.
I'll take it.
All right, well, let me give my reasoning then.
Oh, okay.
Another solid draft from the reigning champ. No first rounder leaves the top end talent dry in this haul, but grabbing Adam Thielen, Kirk Cousins, Cam Newton, as well as Rashard Matthews and Mike Williams in the 8th. I think this really solidified the wide receiver and QB positions in this draft, and I'm just a bit concerned about the running back depth beyond the 3 Rushketeers.
Well, that makes 2 of us on the running back depth question, but I do have to say that I feel pretty good about it. I mean, obviously, when you look back through the draft round by round and kind of see where you took a guy and who was taken after that, there are clearly some other decisions I would rather have made, whether it was waiting on a quarterback or only taking 1 rather than taking 2 within the top 5 rounds like I did. But, I think things sort of played out the way they did. And to make it out of the draft with a couple of guys that I think I can count on in a rotational capacity, as well as retaining Gurley and still being able to also create about $22 of cap room through the Hilton trade. I think I made it out a little bit better than I thought when the draft got started and the tequila was flowing.
That tequila, it'll get you.
Damn that Milagro.
All right, so that wraps up the draft review or the draft grades section We'll move on to our final section here, which we will review the championship game predictions. Let's put out a little sexiness, Nor. Let's light some fires and kick some tires. What are your championship game predictions for 2018?
Well, just based off how the rosters ended up playing out and how things like looked last year in terms of what worked, I gotta say that I'm predicting a Kevin coming back to the promised land in a battle with a man sitting across from me, old Samwell. Just the amount of talent you were able to pull into the wide receiver position, adding on to your existing running backs. I just feel like your team's gonna be strong throughout. We'll see if or how you can get under the cap. I think that's going to be your biggest hurdle. But oh, you're shaking. You're shaking. But, that obviously remains to be seen. But as we already alluded to, Kevin, was able to get a bunch of players that he can rotate in and rely on just to get some consistent points week to week to go with his team built around running backs, right? I think that proved to work for me last year, and I think that's going to be kind of the way that the league continues to go, doubling down on some heavy running backs. That's my plan.
Funny you touch on Kevin. I might come back to that. Didn't you pick me for the championship game last year?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I think you're trying to jinx the hell out of me.
No,
It's
no.
working.
I don't know.
Stop picking me. All right, so my championship game prediction, now this comes with a disclaimer, okay? This prediction is based on a single factor for both owners, okay? My selections for this year's championship game are, and this will come as a shock based upon my draft grades, but they are Feralis and Jason.
What?
Now I know. Let me explain.
What?
The Feralis pick is 100% contingent on his players staying healthy, as I think his depth is a bit lacking. But if Watson stays healthy and performs at that MVP type level for 16 games, as well as Dalvin Cook and Jerick McKinnon at running back, having Keenan Allen, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Golden Tate rounding out the wide receiver and flex positions, and old reliable Greg Olsen at tight end, I think this is a great mixture of high upside and safe players to propel Mike back to the championship game.
Good God.
As for Jason, I said wait. I said let me speak.
What?
Put the pitchforks away.
Oh, there's no justice like angry mob justice.
I believe a beer bitch can pull the full reversal and win the league for the second year in a row if this one thing happens. Jason stays out of his own way. It is a well-known fact that Jason has had a talented team over the past years, but seemingly always makes poor sit, start, or trade decisions. With Saquon, Melvin, Gordon, and Derrick Henry at running back to pair with Devontae Adams and Marvin Jones, and Jarvis Landry at wide receiver, and also playing the matchups with Jack Doyle and Austin Hooper, I think Jason can make a strong playoff run and win it all! Redemption! You gave him the blueprint from beer bitch to champion. I think it'd be done again. Just stay out of your own goddamn way, Jason. Speaking of beer bitch,
Oh, no.
we will move on to our beer bitch bowl predictions.
Well.
Nora, I will graciously allow you to go first.
I'm gonna go with two guys that one guy that I like and one guy that I put up with for the sake of the league. I'll let you guys figure out who is who. I'm gonna go with Gomez versus Corey. Really only because I think while I do like some of the higher end pieces on Gomez's team, exactly what you touched on earlier. Some games, some weeks he's going to score a ton, some weeks he's going to not. And I think you're asking a lot for every one of your good weeks to be that good that it actually turns into a W. There's going to be some games where he scores the second most points and he's playing against the person that scores the most points. It ends up happening that way. I could see it happening. Corey, obviously, he's relying completely on the Patriots and Tom Brady. I think eventually the deal that Tom Brady made with the devil is going to come to fruition, and it's just going to come back and get him. He's going to get pulled into the depths of hell. So I think Tom Brady's not going to be around, and half of Corey's team is going to tank.
Okay. Well, there's a common thread between your pick and mine, and that is someone that I think you tolerate. Just kidding, not you, Corey. It's actually going to be Gomez versus Kevin in my version of the Beer Bitch Bowl. Jason stays clean this year. He's cleaned up his act. He's stayed sober. So my reasoning for Gomez is his depth at all skill positions, paired with a lack of top-tier talent. So Julio Jones is his only blue-chip running back, wide receiver, or tight end. And this lack of talent is not mitigated by extreme depth. He's only runs about 2 to 3 deep at both running back and wide receiver, and really only has 2 Hail Marys at tight end in Cook and Eifert. As far as Kevin, I think Kevin finally loses his lifelong bet to me by securing Beer Bitch this year, as his running back depth really comes back to bite him here. Only 3 total running backs, as well as no quote-unquote star wide receivers to carry a 3 wide receiver lineup. It's really going to have to be patchwork effort from Kevin throughout the year. And the start-sit decisions will push him over the edge into madness and ultimately a toilet trophy. He would have been Beer Bitch last year had he not had the miraculous 4-0 start to start the season. So
True.
I think Kevin closes the circle here and becomes the 2018 Beer Bitch.
Remind us all of your lifelong bet again.
Oh, well, whoever gets Beer Bitch, if it's Kevin or myself,
Yeah.
well, I don't dabble in science fiction, but when Kevin gets Beer Bitch, he will have to pay my league entry the following season. So that is
a league entry which
lifelong bet.
seems to be going up every year.
Yeah, I don't know why Kevin's increasing it.
Kevin's the one pushing for it.
Anyway, those are our championship game and Beer Bitch Bowl predictions for 2018. And that just about closes it up for the first inaugural podcast of the dual threat variety. We've got myself, Nor, and Jason has graciously brought in an item here to help us close out this podcast. And I plan on attaching pictures so that everybody can see what's taking place right here. But
Whoa.
I think most people have seen it by now. Jason has purchased his Beer Bitch duties and has bought Nor his championship ring. Nor, why don't you put that bad boy on and let's see what it looks like.
Out of the respect of the lady in the room, I'm not going to stand
Put it on!
I was going to say I'm not going to stand up right now.
Oh, look at it.
Right,
How does it
right,
feel? What does it feel like?
The weight.
nice? Is it
the weight is
weighty?
good. Weight is reliable.
Okay.
If it runs out of bullets, you can always hit them with it.
It's girthy. Let me
Oh,
tell
yeah.
you that.
It's about time something on me is girthy. This is tremendous.
Oh, man. Yeah, I don't think you can fit 4 of those on your fingers.
Well,
Not to be forgotten.
let's see. Ah, yes.
Oh,
the best
yes.
part.
The engraved team name. I will definitely include these pictures. Immortalized forever in this stand.
That's what it's all about, people.
Anybody doing anything tonight?
This is what weeks of not having a life will get you. It's tremendous.
You made it
Tremendous.
to the hilltop. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for the first episode of the Dual Threat Podcast Season 2. Who can believe it?
I'm so sweaty.
Thanks everybody. Have a great week. We'll talk to you after week 1.
Cheers, boys.